I used to do lots of things.
I used to do things and I'd say things and Jesus I was evil. Take things and break things and Jesus I was evil. I never shook, baby.
Let's do it then. Episode, you keep track. What episode?
119.
119.
You like history? What happened in the year 119 BC?
119 BC?
BC, yeah.
Oh,
Before the
God.
Common Era, yeah. Oh, come on, Ben. Don't. Want me to give you a hint?
Yeah, what?
Okay, somebody was battling somebody else.
Yeah, a lot of battle. I mean, so Caesar was like 44 BC. I'm trying to think. So that would have been like not even early Roman Republic. I don't know, man. You put me on the spot like this. What? I can't think of anything significant in 119 BC. I think 117 AD is considered the height of the Roman Empire. That I can tell you.
Yeah.
119 BC. I'm not sure, which has absolutely nothing to do with our episode today.
Yeah.
Today we're doing we're discussing a book. I don't want to say book review. We're discussing a book. I like some of these structured episodes where we do a movie or a book or an article or something like that. So we're doing Andrew Doyle's The New Puritans. This came out, I believe, 2022.
I believe so.
It's really
subtitle is How the Religion of Social Justice Captured the Western World.
Yes. This we've just communicated kind of updates on where we were in the book, but we haven't talked about if we liked it or not at all. Yeah. And even before this we didn't discuss. I love this book. I thought it was so I listened to it. I am a big reader. I'm always reading a book. Literally reading it. I don't really consider audiobooks reading. It's consuming, which is totally fine. I do that more. I do that with nonfiction books like this. So that's how I listen to it. And I say that because on Spotify, you can listen to this if you have Spotify Premium, which just means you pay for it, which I use every single day. And you should, so you can listen to us. And he reads it. And he has really good. He has a really good voice. Yes. Rogan will always say, like, if you're going to do a audiobook, you should do you should read it. I think people like that.
Yeah. And if you can't read it, get Andrew Doyle to read it.
Yeah, Andrew Doyle. He's very British, very pithy. I think he's actually Northern Irish. I don't know if you take umbrage with that. I think he considers himself British. But he has a really good delivery and a great voice to listen to. And what this book is about, if you can't glean it from the title and subtitle, this to me is like probably I'm gonna say probably the best kind of all-encompassing book about what we call the crits in not like a history of it, not really all that much going back into like the 60s and the Frankfurt School. I think he talks about that a little. He does.
Yeah, he definitely touches on it.
But this is like basically the 2010s into 2021. Really, like in all different aspects of it: gender critical theory, race critical theory, media, trans, of course, like media, higher ed, all politics, all of these things, and it's very topical. It's really like that period that I know Greg Lukianoff, and we've talked about it before too. Like I think it's kind of right after both you and I graduated college. Yeah. It's like I think they really marked like 2013, 2014 is when this started, went to hyperdrive with Trump, went into warp speed with the
George
Black
Floyd.
Lives Matter, and COVID. And I think it's luckily on the downturn. Doesn't mean you have to fight it wherever you find it. But this book, I think, does a great and ends on a note like that, which I'm glad he did. But again, this is timing. But like if you're looking for kind of where the crits exist, both in like legislature, he talks about the Scottish anti-speech bills, and in the media and politics and just DEI, all these things. This is the book for you. Like if you're interested in that and where it's really taken root, this is the book for you.
Yeah, I I agree with pretty much everything you said. I found the book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I found it both engaging and enraging. There were definitely a lot of parts where
Yeah.
I got really angry because he
Me
points
too.
to a lot of specific cases, even some cases that I was not aware of. But at the same time, it's like the culture where there's so much shit going on. It's hard to keep track of all
Yeah.
these controversies. But there were some things that really pissed me off when I found
Yeah.
out. Like, holy shit, that actually happened. Like that person got
Yeah.
accused of this for that dumb joke or that silly comment or that bill that was that's being passed in the UK.
Well,
Another
well,
thing-
right there. That's part
yeah,
of it is
yeah.
that like he's writing this, and I like books like this because I'm understandably very American focused. As an
Yeah.
American, it's where I live. That's what I am. And he does talk a lot about America. You kind of can't help it. Wherever you live, that's just kind of what our biggest export is, our culture.
Yep.
But I like the British perspective too, and how it's actually like much worse there.
Yeah.
As much as we complain, like legally, it is crazy. Like I just want to like wrap myself in the American flag when I read like some of what goes over there, because man, you gotta love that First Amendment because people are going to get fined and going to jail for jokes.
I know, it's insane.
Sick.
And I also loved his use of the term liberal because that it's I've always considered myself pretty left leaning. But like the term liberal has been kind of violated and bastardized in recent years by both the left and the right. I think they're with the sort of crit SJW intersectional crowd, they call themselves liberal, even though the things they do are actually going against so many of like the genuinely good liberal wins over the last few decades. Like in terms of like equal rights for blacks and for gays. And now it's like undoing so much. All these things were considered like liberal like goods, and how it's undoing that. And then and also how like the right will conflate liberal with like woke intersectional stuff. So I liked his I like Doyle, like how Doyle was sort of like, look, we need to go back to genuine like classical liberalism. Like this is what liberalism is, and this is how it's like the sort of like more broad, big tent definition of liberalism. So I'm glad that he's and as someone as I don't know if he's necessarily a linguist, but he's a very literary person. So I'm glad that he was very specific.
He's an English teacher, I know that, and he's very smart. A little more background on him. I just know him from online personalities and being guests on podcasts. But
Titania McGrath.
Yeah, Titania McGrath is one of the best characters on the internet. Titania is I actually think he retired it recently.
Yeah.
But for I think 2018, for like 4 or 5 years, it was like a absurdly progressive crit Twitter, but also he published a couple books under her pseudonym, and it was funny because it kind of does what the best satire elicits. Is it says things that aren't that actually would be heard in those circles. Like, I mean, one of the popular books was like A Defense of Looting, like shit like that. And it's kind of stretching it a little. And where like you would see people commenting, like whether I don't know where they are on the political spectrum or whatever, but like criticizing it, not realizing that it's satire. I think that is a really good sign of good satire.
Yes, from both sides, because like there were people on the right who were like, "See, look, another typical libtard," right? And then, but then there were people on the left who were like agreeing with Titania McGrath, like the most. So it was just like,
like the I always forget. You always say who it is, but it was James Lindsay and who.
Helen Pluckrose and
Helen Pluckrose and
Peter Boghossian.
Boghossian. I always know it's a fucking Armenian name. Boghossian. And they had those essays that were published very genuinely in left-wing publications out in like Oregon or something. That were just absurd. Did that have something to do with like the sexuality of dogs or something like that? Like transgender dogs?
That was the most famous one that I think actually won an award or something like that. It was instances of dog humping at dog parks is proof of like this is a term that's I'm so glad has kind of fallen out of favor, is rape culture.
Rape
Where
culture.
yeah, do you remember that from a few years ago? Like, oh,
Yeah.
like college campuses are just a hotbed of rape, just
Yeah.
rape just being promoted everywhere. So like I think the paper was that like whenever a dog humps another dog at a dog park, it usually means that the dog got it from their owner because the owner's just going around just raping people.
Yeah. But that was published with all sincerity and
Yeah, and
regular
it
publication.
I don't know if it like necessarily won an award, but like in the publication, like they gave it a sort of like, oh, like here's a noteworthy.
Groundbreaking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, like
Yeah. So shit like that is what we're saying. And Andrew Doyle, he's very he's sardonic, he's British, he can't help it.
Yeah.
And it comes through in him reading his work. I agree with what you were saying, where it's like I would get angry. Sometimes I'd be like, you know what, I can't listen to any of the book today. It would just be like, it does make you so angry because so much of this was avoidable. It was people's lives were ruined.
yes.
It was so. So let's start with the title. So the New Puritans, and that in itself is a American reference. In a like I would say, they came from England, but an American reference where the Puritans were, and he kind of focuses on the Salem witch trials, and he ends with them too. And the way he connects that, I think, was really well done. Where he talks about how, and I want to get into solutions. I want to end the episode with that, but how it was all about, it was pure, obviously purity, like purity, lack of evidence, like not needing evidence is really just casting aspersions, really believing the victim in ways that we did as a culture, starting with, but I know Me Too was a big one. Then all of these racial, like kind of comically racist things that would happen. I say comically because they weren't true. Like they,
Justice Smollett
Jesse Smollett, that was the best one. But numerous ones that were just like not true. And usually it would be if they were, racist against black people would be the first one to tell you, like, there's no, like Dave Chappelle talk, there's no way that happened to Jesse Smollett. But like the New Puritans. So obviously referencing the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and they came over here to, I think we're taught in school sometimes that it's like, I get it, where we're taught like they were escaping persecution, but like and which is wrong. Like you shouldn't persecute even very, very conservative religious people as long as you keep them in check. But like if they were in power, if they were in power, they would be the ones who were oppressing people. You did not want the Puritans to be in power. Basically, they came over here to have their little like hyper religious fiefdom or whatever.
And also the thing of like, denying guilt is evidence of your guilt and that whole thing.
Well, and that goes all the way back to like the other witch trials throughout Europe, where it was, and they do it the best in where they do it in Monty Python, the Holy Grail. Like if you throw a witch or a suspected witch in the river and they drown, well, they weren't a witch, so oops, but she's dead. And if they float, well, they're a witch, so burn witches. And I actually, and my saying is that we don't burn books, burn witches. That's what I tweet. But I'm just kidding. Unless they actually are malevolent forces, and then fight them.
We got a whole bunch of them in LA, man. I'll tell you what.
I bet. I just want to go. I want to go to one of those things that you go to, which is like a hidden crucifix and pop outs or spraying people with holy water.
Yeah.
That'll go over well. So he starts. Anything you want to add? Just kind of about that?
Or... No, but yeah, I agree. That was like he did a great job of drawing the parallels between like the sort of thing where we look back on, we go, oh my god, like how, like what an unenlightened time that was. We're kind of doing the same thing today. So
that's why I love it. History repeats itself. It's a platitude, whatever. It's so effing true. And I don't know if this matters, but you were born and raised in California. Like, did they really teach the Salem witch trials a lot? Was that like?
I do remember learning it. Yeah, but I don't remember a whole lot of it.
I feel like it was a big part of my childhood. I don't know why. Maybe like we definitely read The Crucible and watched the movie. I don't know if that all happened in 1 year, if it was spaced out, and that's why. And I don't like. I live in New Jersey. It's not like I live in New England or anything. But just like I feel, and I love the Salem witch trials. I
Yeah.
really do. I think they're such a great, like, if there were a handful of moments in American history, I think we should study. I think that's one of them.
Mm.
And like history repeats itself. It shows like injustice, and it has religion and the legal system and injustice and um, isolation and family dynamics, and like how much of them were just like catty bitches, and they were like, and like you see that now, or like in the 90s with like suburban movies and people like just spreading rumors about each other, and it goes all like so much of the Salem witch trials I think is still present in our culture today, even if I do roll my eyes. I think the term witch hunt is way overused,
Right.
like a lot of these terms like racism, like fascist and Nazis and all this stuff, like it actually takes away from the power, because a real witch hunt is terrifying and does still happen. And I don't like, especially when people on the right throw it around. Like, no, you're not, this isn't a witch hunt. Like, they have evidence against you. You're being put through the legal, whatever. And you have a lot of power and money. So anyway, the book opens, and because I did listen to this a while ago, I don't remember exactly what it was, but he opens with something that really made me sad, where, because I think his situation is not unique to him, where he, I think, was meeting with a group, and fill in any blanks, where he's meeting with a group of friends, and like a longtime friend or something, or someone he was close with, calls him a Nazi. And really just like out of nowhere, and cuts him out of his life for like something he did, like an interview or something he did, or some view he had that seemed pretty anodyne. And I hate that, because I've seen that in my life, not really me personally, but just like I've seen that with relationships with people who have known each other for literally 40, 50 years, and politics got in the way, even though free politics has always existed. It's just how venomous it's become. And like when I hear those stories, because like in the end, a lot of these, like, we're just people. They're like, I don't mean to be a hippie about it, but it's like we're just going to work, raising families, meeting up with friends, celebrating holidays and life events, and like to cut someone out like that and call them a Nazi because of, I forget what his position was, but it's totally normal and reasonable, and probably like maybe a majority opinion. And that's how he starts. And I think that's a good place to start. I don't know if you want to add anything to that section.
Yeah, well, he told that story. He definitely touched on something that I've been thinking a lot about, where it's like, with the culture war and with politics in general, it's like it's become so normal for us to, assume that a person's political views are metric of their character. Where it's like, if you're a conservative, then that must mean you hate progress, you hate women, you hate minorities. I don't want to be around you. Or if you're left wing, you must be like a whiny communist sissy. And it's like, come on, like that's it.
Well, yeah, I like that you're bringing that up, because, and let's just bounce around. I've printed out my notes here. So I think what you're getting at is what he brings up pretty late in the book, or at least the note I have pretty late in the book, where it's kind of like I'm going to say both sides, even though I don't think people fall on sides. I actually don't think a majority of people fall on a side legitimately. I think sometimes they put themselves on sides because we're creatures of like, we don't like to be isolated. I think that goes back on our DNA. So we start as like ascribing sides to ourselves, even if you took polls and you filled out surveys and all that, we're actually a lot more similar than we are different. That being said, I'm going to say sides here for brevity's sake. So like how each side will ascribe like the worst characteristics of the other. And in this context, it'd be like when you're tearing down statues. That was a big one, something that Trump was right about, where first they're going to come for the Confederate statues, which I personally am for. And I was for back when I was very progressive. But even then, if you had asked me in 2017, should we take down the statue of Robert E. Lee in New Orleans, which they did, I would have said yes. If you asked me today, should they take it down, I would say yes. At either time, I would not have said you should take down Thomas Jefferson like they just took down in New York City at, I think, some government building. You should not take down George Washington. Like I could, and I like to give myself credit as much of a progressive as I was.
Mhm.
I could definitely see that, but Trump was right about this, and they are and have been coming after people like the like Abe Lincoln in Wisconsin. They took down at University of Madison, Wisconsin.
Yep.
So and Gandhi, I think was one. I guess there was a statue of Gandhi somewhere in London or in England. Ironic.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that's good. Like I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And not that they took it down, that it was there. And it's like, yeah, I think Gandhi had some serious issues.
Yeah.
I think it's been revealed in personal letters when it comes to what's it? Not pederasty because it wasn't boys, but pedophiles, like
Yeah.
pedophilic issues. I don't
Yeah.
know. Don't quote me on that.
Mhm.
But like that, and like for that reason or other, and I think also maybe some race things, like racist things. You know, in
Yeah.
India they have the whole caste system, which is
Oh, yeah.
literal racism, like
Right.
as modern day racism as you can get, but because it's based on your skin and your ethnicity. But why not like celebrate his peaceful resistance to the most powerful empire in the world? Like,
Yeah.
like isn't that like so? It's that concept of it's like it doesn't matter. It's the purity test. It's kind of like ironically the the one drop rule almost, like going back to slavery and Jim Crow. Like it doesn't matter that Gandhi led and really became the cornerstone for modern peaceful resistance that then was replicated in the civil rights movement, but that he had probably let's just say probably some racist views. I don't know. I'm just giving them that.
See, it's around like 100 years ago or something, or 80 years ago, 90 years.
What was
ago.
that?
It's like wasn't Gandhi or like alive? Like
yeah, this was like the 19. Well, India won their independence in 1947, I believe.
Yeah,
I think 49 around that time. So it was like that time, right?
Yeah.
So
those views, as important as they are today, it's like they were much more prevalent.
Let's say sure. Let's say they weren't even like, I don't know. You're right. Like, yes. And then there's relativity with all of that, but it's like, well, but that's not like, I make the same argument with Columbus. Like, that's not why we're not celebrating him because he was a racist bastard. Like everyone like, and I think Columbus was actually, and I'll go a step further because it wasn't just at the time. Like, I think Columbus was bad for the time too. Like his own men mutinied him. I think he was particularly cruel, but we celebrate Columbus one because he is a symbol for and I'm not saying this because I'm Italian American, but a lot of Italian Americans looked at Columbus at a time when Italian Americans were discriminated against openly.
Right.
The largest lynching in American history was against Italians, not against Black people or Chinese or anyone else. I'm talking about a single instance. It was against Italians, not over time. Of course, that was Black people, but so they faced real discrimination, and Italian Americans looked at Columbus and go, "Look, we are part of this." Like it was a touchstone for a minority group to say, "No, we belong here too." That's important. That's a very pro-American thing.
Yeah,
and to take that away from a group of people is one reason I'm against it. But you want to throw that aside, fine. He connected two worlds that have been disconnected for thousands of years.
Right.
That's important. That's worth celebrating.
Yeah.
He gave Italians spaghetti sauce. Like that's where it comes from. Tomatoes didn't exist before Columbus in Italy. So yeah, that's where it goes. All of the Italian food, like a lot of Italian food that we think of now as Italian food, comes from the New World. In the 1300s, they weren't eating pasta and meatballs.
Right.
Like they don't really eat that in Italy. Anyway, that's Italian American cuisine. I won't go into that whole thing.
Yeah.
Which I think should be celebrated on its own. But anyway, so that's the point that Andrew Doyle makes in the book is that like it's always and of course only against your enemies. When it's for those you agree with, like Lenin, let's say, or Stalin or whatever on the left, or Marx, it's not like, or Che Guevara. Perfect. Che Guevara was openly racist.
Oh yeah.
Super racist guy. He talked about how the Congolese were too dumb to have a revolution like they had in Latin America. Honestly, I've read the Motorcycle Diaries. I have it on my bookshelf. Like he was super fucking racist. But it's like, oh no, well, he still did these good things. Like, fine, then just use the same logic for everyone then. And like, Abraham Lincoln said probably some racist stuff about Native Americans. He also freed the slaves.
Exactly.
Big deal. Like, So
I mean they changed the name because I think there was like a school in San Francisco, like this Abraham Lincoln elementary school or whatever, and they changed the name because he wasn't progressive enough.
They not even they changed the name of who's the one who just died. The senator, Democrat, lifelong Democrat. She
Ruth
lived like
Bader
she was like 130 years old.
Ginsburg.
No, that was the
No.
Supreme Court justice.
Oh.
Feinstein.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They changed one of her name. She's like a lifelong. She's a mayor of San Francisco,
Yeah.
lifelong Democrat, probably very progressive on many things. Maybe
Yep.
towards the end, she wasn't as progressive because she was 150 years old. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but so she, I mean, that is what caused them to. It was that shit that really allowed the Chinese parent. We did a whole episode on this. Like,
Yeah,
don't
that's
piss
right.
off Chinese parents with
That's
like
right,
Asian
yeah.
parents.
Yeah.
But got them to kind of unify and make change there, which is good. Democracy at work.
Yes.
So anyway, that's one. He kind of goes over these different, I don't know, pillars, aspects of the crits, as we call them, and that being one of the best ones. It's they always look at the worst of everybody. When, I mean, they kind of go the worst of everybody, even if they're on their side, because they have these purity tests. It's probably easier for them.
Right.
When it's someone like Donald Trump, right? Easy. Like, it doesn't matter if Donald Trump did anything good for Donald Trump, gave more money to HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. Doesn't matter, right? Donald Trump was the first person to become president who was openly for gay marriage. Barack Obama, the first time he ran, was not. So shit like that doesn't matter. He's evil and he's Hitler reincarnate. But they also do that for, and Doyle points this out, for people on their own side. And not to jump the shark here, but that is one of the faults of them, is that they're cannibalistic. Yes. Right. And that's good. And we like that. Unfortunately, I do see, not to go on a tangent, but right-wing Twitter is kind of I tweeted right before this, and Entroperian responded. I asked right-wing Twitter, why are mom and dad fighting with Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. That whole controversy.
And he explained it. I'm like, I'm going to sit this one out, but I hope everyone has fun.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, the right can do it too, but the left is particularly bad. Yeah. And also, Shapiro's always been the target of a side of the right. And he's open about that because he is Jewish. I think Israel has the right to exist. Yeah. So, kind of getting back to the book, I like the quote and I looked this quote up when I was taking my notes to clarify it. So from, I don't remember if I think it's Alice in Wonderland or Through the Looking Glass. I don't remember which one it is, but it's, when I use a word, it means what I choose it to mean, nothing more, nothing less. And it is kind of this, and that's how the crits use language. And the new Puritans use language to constantly change what words mean, move the goalposts. I think we saw this during the Great Awakening, when like literally Webster's and dictionary.com would change terms that I thought we all understood, like racism, like he uses the turf one, like turf.
Yeah. The racism one where it's like they changed it to a formula where it's no longer hating someone because of their race. It's power plus prejudice. Yeah,
so. Plus power. Yeah, and then whenever I see that, I always put the Pokemon card plus power. The train, whatever I do, I'm like plus power.
Well, the power thing is funny because, like, did you see the recent?
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
It's and in typical woke fashion, it's like power doesn't mean anything. It's just like, oh, it's about power.
It is what it means. It's the quote. It is what it means. What I mean, it means nothing more, nothing less. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you see the trailer for the Acolyte, the new Star Wars show that's coming up?
Yeah,
it's very diverse. But there's a line in the trailer where one of the characters. I mean, like, the big part of a big central part of the Star Wars mythos is like, the light side, the light side and the dark side, right? Yeah. But there's a line in the trailer where one of the characters goes, "It's not about good versus evil; it's about power." And it's like, oh, great! And it's like, I know where this is going right off.
I love Star Wars. I always have. It was one of the, I don't know, IPs I grew up on.
Hell yeah.
I feel weird saying that. What's a different term for IP? I don't like that. Like
franchise or series?
Franchise, yeah. It's one of the franchises I grew up on. I will always love it, but I'm not gonna watch the like Disney streaming offshoots and shit. I'll watch whatever. I'll watch what's canon. Like I'll watch the movies. If they do another, I don't know when or if they're going to. I mean, it is a matter of if. It is when. It's just when that will happen. Why wouldn't you? Yeah. But probably, I don't know, probably another 5-6 years, I would think. but yeah, I'm not watching it because I know what to expect. Like it's like
Okay.
the same with like Lord of the Rings shit. Like I'm not
Uh,
watching any of those.
wow.
They almost seem like they have contempt for the original kind of creations. And
I hate the fans too. It's such an annoying thing, but
yeah,
that's a whole other thing.
that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so their manipulation of language,
Yeah,
which
and I really liked his explanation of how like critical theory and how it ties into language and how like that shapes our reality and stuff. I thought that was a very good you know easy to digest outline of like this very complex and very stupid philosophy. I shouldn't say stupid because then I'm sure it has some valid points and things, but like you know the way it ties into language and how it's manifesting nowadays, and also just like how that's bad for policy, where it's
no,
just
you
like
can say it's stupid because it is stupid.
yeah, most of it is, yeah. But I mean, just like and how that's bad for policy when words are just kind of like vague and nebulous and politically charged now.
Well, yeah, it's things like asking a Supreme Court justice like what is a woman, and they
Yeah,
can't. I
yeah,
mean, I don't think that should be difficult, but because it's political now, like what a woman is.
yeah,
Um, and lived experience, that was one.
yeah,
So yeah, chapter 8 he talks about lived experiences, where again this is very like British. Like have I talked about, like, I could not give a shit less about the royal family. I just don't
yeah.
care.
Yeah, same here.
But the Meghan Markle,
Mm,
so there was something, and I'm paraphrasing here, or like quick summary, like something about, I do remember this, like them not getting some title, or the child, or like the child not getting a title,
mm,
and then that was like demonstrably untrue,
yeah,
where that was just like used for headlines, and of course they had a racial element to it. Um, and then when that came out as just being untrue, and the person or publication who was confronted with that information, had to answer for that, they just said, well, that's her lived experience.
yeah,
um, which to me, one, is redundant and stupid.
yeah,
I can't stand that term. To me, that's just like a shibboleth of a term that that the crits will use just to test if like you're one of them.
yeah.
Um, and it is also, to me, it's a version of what Camille Foster, who is black, will
Mhm.
call the melanin force field. It's fine, where it's like, and then he uses that, kind of tongue in cheek. He's like, because of the melanin force field, I can say these things. And I think lived experience, especially with someone like Meghan Markle, who's a black woman, I guess, like she is, but I don't know. Yes, she is, but she, if you can say that, you can hide behind that force field. It's like, well, it doesn't, like that. As a lawyer, to me, that's very disturbing that a unidentifiable, um, you know, insubstantial accusation, and then defense to that trumps evidence, trumps like hard evidence, like that
Right.
just being untrue. And I don't think that's very healthy for a culture.
No.
um that brings me to, again, we're just jumping around here. So I
Yeah.
also I love a good quote. So in
Oh
also in
yeah.
chapter 8 he quotes 1984. I really like this one. Again, um I think Orwell, I love him. He's honestly one of my favorite writers. I think one of the most brilliant writers and thinkers of the 20th century. Um, I do think Orwellian gets overused, kind of
Yeah.
like witch hunt, especially
Yeah.
by people on the right. I've misused it before too, back when I was a shit lib.
Yeah.
I remember tweeting like, "Hey, she's using Orwellian doublespeak," like about Trump or something.
Yeah.
Well, I learned. So I like this quote a lot. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. So the best example of this for me was fiery but mostly peaceful protests. I think that wasn't my personal red pill moment, but it was up there because that was, I believe that was after. Yeah, that was after my red pill moment. If I had to pick one, the most germane would probably be racism is the real virus.
Oh yeah.
After I'd been someone for for about 3 months, I was like, "Come on!" I was like, "Let's do it together. Stay inside. Don't spread the virus. Save Nana." And then it's like, "Oh, but racism's real." I was like, "What? What? Like what?" So yeah. So like, don't believe your eyes and ears. It's when something happens to people, not white people, and maybe a not white person. Oh, so let me use the example he uses. So, and I think this actually happened in New Jersey, where I don't know if you knew this, but New Jersey has one of the largest Indian populations in the country.
Really? Oh no, yeah, I think I did know that actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
India, especially Gujarati. I had a boss who's Gujarati. He's probably the nicest person I ever met. Great guy.
Yeah.
So in like central Jersey, especially towns like Edison, like the New Brunswick area, Middlesex County is very Indian. I don't even know if that's where actually my hometown has a lot of Indians. And it's not where I'm from, but more North Jersey, but kind of everywhere, Jersey City. And so I don't know where this happened, but Indian students urinated on black girls. And the New York Times, the Gray Lady, supposedly one of the foundational, credible papers.
The paper of record.
Yeah, that's it. The paper of record. Considered this, Joe.
I remember. I know exactly.
To be enacting whiteness. Now, look. You want to? I'm all for a good argument. I'm here. You want to convince me? I will listen to the argument, the analysis, and review the evidence. I'm happy to do that. But that to me is an example of like, don't believe your eyes and ears. You had not white people doing something to not white people, and it was enacting whiteness. And that is a virus. Like that is that, and that should be mocked and ridiculed.
Yeah.
And that wasn't Mother Jones. That wasn't the Palmer report.
It wasn't Tanya McGrath.
Or was it Tanya McGrath? But that's why I honestly think part of why he stopped to Tanya McGrath was because he was getting he couldn't keep up.
Seriously, dude. I remember posting so many times when Titania's character would say something ridiculous, and like a year later, somebody would almost repeat it, like sincerely though. Or like it would take place. So yeah.
And again, this isn't like some like 22-year-old at Emerson College or something.
Yeah.
Or some 19-year-old sophomore in a Gwynedd Mercy or whatever, some school like at Berkeley, Claremont McKenna. This is the New York Times. That's just insane to me. And this was that crazy period where you could put anything into whiteness. It was, and again, to me, this was so goddamn racist. Like if I were the parents of these girls who got urinated on, again, I don't remember the whole backstory into this. I meant to look into it. Also, I just like knowing shit that happens in New Jersey, but I would be like, what the fuck is the matter with you? Talking about like blaming white people for what these Indian boys did. And to me, it's just like the boogeyman of white supremacy. That was probably one of the best terms, that everything you hate isn't just white supremacy. It's kind of turned into the new Hitler, like the new Nazi. Like I feel like we see a little less of that and more of everything I disagree with is white supremacy. And that doesn't make any sense. And like I tweeted recently, if you in Chicago, you had their horrible mayor, Crip mayor, and you had a town hall type thing where it was, I think, all black people and Latinos, maybe Arabs, who were criticizing him for the migrant situation. Yeah. And it's like, I tweeted, I'm like, I just couldn't believe there were that many white supremacists in Chicago. Like Jussie Smollett was right. Like, but it's like, no, because if you took that and those were MAGA hat wearing white people, it would be all over the place, right? Yeah. It would be all over the news. It would be on CNN, MSNBC, all over the place. But because it's like, no, they have the same exact concerns. They were complaining that it's unsafe, that they were taking over parks, taking over houses of worship. Like, where's the money? Why doesn't the money go to us? And that like and shit like that, like if that's happening in 2021, that would be called like enacting, those black people would be like enacting white supremacy.
Yeah, dude. Real quick, side note. So this Andrew Doyle actually published this pretty recently, March 7th of this year.
Oh, okay. Hit me.
On his Substack, The Prophecies of Titania McGrath. I won't go through all of these, but I will say that he lists out the instances.
Share a few.
I'll share a few. So there's one, this is my favorite one.
Yeah.
So this is from the book Woke that he wrote as Titania McGrath.
Yeah.
Where she describes capitalism. Capitalism, after all, is a singularly male phenomenon. The ultimate symbol of capitalism, the skyscraper, is nothing more than a giant cock on the horizon, fucking the heavens. So that's the satire, right? 16 months after the book was published, this article appeared in The Guardian. Upward thrusting buildings ejaculating into the sky. Do cities have to be so sexist? That's one fucking headline. Oh my god!
Yeah, The Guardian. He rips on The Guardian a lot. I used to read The Guardian pretty regularly back.
And
in,
it's
like,
funny because I've dug up a few articles, like during the early days of like early 2000s of them being now it would be heterodox, where they seemed a little bit more moderate on some things.
Yeah,
just like in the span of a decade. Like
well, I don't think it was just a time thing. I think it was, like usual, it was Trump. Well, for them, they're a British paper. I think it's Guardian USA, but it's a British paper. And Brexit for them, which coincided with Trump election for us. Mid 2010s, you had all this shit bubbling up in the early 2010s that accelerated it. And a lot of publications realize that, they can make a lot of money off of kind of the rage bait of their base, and both sides do this, and so they leaned into it. Like Vice did this. Vice did a total about face.
Oh yeah,
not that they were right wing at all, but they were populist, heterodox, like going in, like actually doing
They're
real
edgy.
journalism. Yeah, edgy. Didn't care if they would offend all types of people.
Yeah,
and not that they were trying to be offensive, but they would cover things, and then they made a conscious effort to do like crit journalism, and now they don't exist anymore. And that's and The Guardian. That's all I'm saying. I think they just like made that move to lean into.
Yeah, I'm sure they were probably a pretty respected publication.
They were,
but there's just a couple more of these prophecies that came through real quick. So Titania tweeted this: dog owners, stop saying good boy and good girl to your pets. This kind of gendered language is normalizing the myth of canine sexual dimorphism and delegitimizes the lived experiences of trans dogs. And there's an emoji of a dog and a pride flag.
That was Titania?
That was Titania.
Okay.
And then the subsequent outrage ensured that the tweet went viral. And just a couple of months ago, a leading pet talent agency in the UK called Urban Paws was asking owners whether their cats or dogs identified as gender neutral or non-binary. And he's got like a screenshot of the form, of the survey form that pet, and it says male, female, gender neutral / non-binary, or prefer not to say. Your pet prefers not to say. And then also, which pronoun do pets have a gender identity? This is from the Vet Help Direct. But yeah, it's just, oh my god, this it's a very long list.
I feel like I'll go check. I definitely followed her. I don't know if I need to go check if she still tweets.
Yeah.
But I thought I had heard him say that he discontinued it.
Yeah.
But I'm not positive. Okay. I'm not going to get into like the Scottish anti-speech. Scotland sounds like a fucking nightmare in terms of stuff. I know Scotland is overall, I think, pretty right wing. Pretty left wing.
Yeah.
For a lot of things they do, and it sounds like I did a big kind of, not report, but I used Scotland a lot for a big project I did in law school about housing as a human right. And at the time I was using it, I think it's totally failed and was failing then, but I tried to twist it so that it fit my narrative, because that's what you do. And so I'm not going to go into that. I want to move down a little to, I don't know how much we have to talk about like white fragility and D'Angelo, who I think is kind of like totally fallen off.
I think so. I remember she was on Jimmy Fallon once.
Yeah, back. Well, she's a total, she's a a snake oil salesman,
For sure.
and also like super racist
Yeah.
in their own way, like the racism of low expectations. Like don't like one of the things I know is like don't smile at minorities, and how she's a white woman, and how one of the main like her come to the crits moment was something about like being in a park and there was a white party and a black party, and how she felt about like she felt like she was at the wrong one. And I can't remember this exactly. I'm not doing a good job of it, but how it was like she was just totally projecting. Like anyone would just say, like, no, you're just projecting.
Yeah.
And how like white women's tears, and she kind of does that thing where like she really rips on white women the most,
Yeah.
which is very strange. Has caused the deaths of black people.
I
for
think white women
centuries.
are should be considered like an oppressed class. I think both the left and the right hate them so fucking
They
much.
do get it a lot. I mean, liberal white women. I know I'm using the term how you don't like to use it, but like, for instance, I just saw Jeff Bezos' wife, and I will look into it, but like, she actually got a fat settlement, and she's just funding like all the shit I hate.
Yeah.
And how that's like, what, like, oh my God, it's like, why do you want to fucking ruin everything?
Yeah.
And if you do look at trends, it's like voting trends, it's like, it's really like unmarried white women are now just like the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So anyway, and how they talk like terms like oppressors, all white students propel white supremacy, white teachers commit spirit murder against BIPOC students. I don't know how much BIPOC is still being used. I think it's still there, but I hope it gets phased out.
Yeah, I see it pop up once in a while, but
it's a moronic intersectional like it makes no sense. Oftentimes people who like non-white people actually very, very often they don't agree with each other and are actually enemies with each other and don't share the same values, and to lump them together is just academic intersectionality, which creates some of the best intersectional pretzels. But what I find, what's very concerning about this, my note here is that like this ends with things like erasing whiteness, which is like erasing the classics, erasing white art, which is I think I just have a knee-jerk reaction to like getting rid of anything usually. Like that, any sort of art, any sort of literature, unless it's really like, I'm fine getting rid of things like white fragility. I don't consider that to be like literature. That's just pseudoscience. And could be like an essay, like you want to write about that shit, fine, but that being kind of for like, I know a lot of corporations and organizations kind of foisted that upon their staffs. I know people who read it who we're kind of caught up in that shit. I think a lot of those people have come around. Is very of the moment, which this book really captures, is this moment. I don't think we have to go too much more into D'Angelo. What I want to talk about is getting back to what you said in the beginning, like how mad some of this made you. And while we can sit here and joke about like, no, I don't feel particularly bad for wealthy liberal white women hiring diversity whatever to come to their house and get yelled at for $5,000. I do get mad like where a lot of average people were dragged through the mud, were literally fired, pilloried, censured, and some of them, like the point, and he says this here, and I really like this term, it's like the investigation is the punishment, or excuse me, the process is the punishment, which is the investigation, the public shaming, your coworkers or colleagues, coworkers, students, co-eds, like all that stuff, like writing letters against you. Even if in the end you're vindicated, it's like, I think it's tough to recover from that. That's why we have our legal system set up the way we do, even if, of course, people like O.J. Simpson lose in the court of public opinion. Like, and that might be an extreme example, but like we have the system where like you get a defense. And I think that's the point. Like even O.J. got a defense. A very good defense, actually. but like these people don't. Like I remember he used one example, and I'm just gonna try and think of this from memory because I don't think I have notes on it. But it was like a janitor or a custodian or a tech or some like lower income person, might have even been a racial minority in England, I think, had to go through this process at like some private school. So you had like wealthy, mostly white, privileged students, lambasting this lower, like that shows the perversion of the identity politics because the focus is on immutable characteristics,
Right.
or not even immutable characteristics like transgender stuff, but race and ethnicity and religion. People who have lots of privilege can use it as a sword, can use it on the offensive against someone, maybe a 50-year-old janitor who doesn't use a pronoun correctly, or I think something happened over there. If that was over there, if it was here, where they like called the police because some students were doing something and students were a certain race, and he was just doing what he'd been instructed to do, but because of the racial optics of it, it caused issues. And it's like, no, there's no class. Like that all went out the door because that lost. A lot of these ideas are not popular with the lower classes at all.
Right.
They're hyper academic and force fed, force fed at higher ed, and even, I mean, at a young age too, but at things like private schools, where and because people love to play the victim because you're not a real victim. Like if you had to be a real victim, like a dissident in the Soviet Union or something like that, or a Christian in Libya, or I don't know, a Muslim in India or something like that, where you could face real discrimination. Like, no, that's not like that's real shit. But they get to be a victim because someone didn't approve of them being non-binary, like didn't like. So that's what I mean, and that's the kind of sick perversion of this. It's like the people who are the most privileged a lot of times actually wield the most power, but in an inverse sort of way, not in the typical kind of like Tory Republican white man sort of way, but like they benefit from the 2-parent wealthy private school upbringing, but then they can say, well, my mom is Nigerian, so I'm oppressed or something like that.
I really liked his chapter on like the whole like Count Dankula thing. Like,
that's Scotland, and do you want to recap that?
Yeah. So Count Dankula, if I remember correctly, I can't remember his real name, but Dankula, he initially started off as a pretty left-wing guy. I think he was like a socialist, and then or a Marxist or something. And I don't know if he evolved into like more of a right-wing guy, or he was pushed there from because of all this shit that's been happening. But yeah, he's
like an edgelord type guy.
Yeah,
and I think that used to be more left, and then culture made that more right.
But yeah, he gained infamy for his girlfriend's pug, who she kept saying was like the most adorable thing ever. And he even says in this video that went viral was just to piss off my girlfriend, I made him do like the most horrible thing I could think of, which is if you say gas the Jews, it'll raise its paw, it'll like say Kyle. And there's like this compilation of his dog doing this thing, and it's like, yeah, of course it's offensive, but it's also, he acknowledges like, like he's not praising Hitler or the Nazis in any way.
It was also the point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then so he got in a bunch of legal trouble in Scotland. But I remember there's one great quote, and I'm paraphrasing here, but Andrew Doyle says something like, I don't think we should be deferring to Scottish Parliament for what constitutes humor.
Right. Exactly. Yes. And we don't need these like just humorless social climber, like just the people who, I don't know, just like the worst people in the country, whether that's Scotland or England or the United States, determining what's funny. And I don't think that's very funny. I get the point he's trying to prove. It seemed like, to me, that seems so, but like making a dog do the Sig Heil just seems dumb. But then you get people like me defending him because you go after him with the power of your legal system.
Exactly.
And I don't really want to defend that. But I can't help it because
Yeah.
like, yeah, you should like, you have the right to be offensive and
Yeah.
shitty.
Yeah.
Like that's not, that shouldn't be a crime, or to have like a bad sense of humor.
Right. Well, talk more about the solutions though. To
Yeah. I'm just looking through here. I do want to really what a couple more things I want to clarify, and then we'll wrap up. I know we're at almost an hour. I wish I thought of more. I wish I had more examples down of, but I do want, if you're going to read this book or listen to it, which I definitely think you should, highly recommend, the all of the people, average people, who had their lives ruined because of this thinking and because of the new Puritan thinking, like that girl in New York City who there's an issue like the dog walker and the birder,
Yep.
and her life was ruined because of when he turned on his recorded, and she lost her job and she had to leave, and like that is one of my biggest fears, is just like going viral for something out of context.
Yeah.
And especially in a certain moment, because that, like, you kind of had worse timing with that. And it's those moments that like, that's why I'm not trying to get all highfalutin, but like that's kind of why I like doing this show and I like talking about these things, because like this isn't just about like, oh, is Donald Trump kicked off of Twitter, or is this like, no, this is like, just this happens all over the country, all over several countries, at all different areas of life, at schools, at jobs and offices, at NGOs, nonprofits, whatever it is. It's like there's this system that is a combination of pseudo legal systems, whether that's a Title IX hearing at a college, or whether that's an HR hearing at an office, that, you know, the more people hear this kind of stuff, read these kind of books, they see, they see through the bullshit. Like they appreciate things like intent and context, things that for some people don't matter. And and that's really why I like to talk about these things, not to just like make fun of people, or to highlight like kind of fringe or high profile situations. Like J.K. Rowling, I defend her, even though I think she's been shitty in the past. Like I defend her.
Yep.
And because it's the kind of, they can do it to her, they can do it to you.
Yeah.
Like her sales have improved with all of it.
Yeah.
Her like, but like she's saying very normal, popular, understandable, scientifically accurate things, and people have credible threats against her life.
Yeah.
And if they're going to do it to J.K. Rowling, who lives in a compound basically, or whatever, I don't know if she does, but has all the money in the world, then they'll do it to you, and you will, and you could suffer, and no one will give a shit.
Yeah.
Or I mean, I hope people do give a shit. That's what I'm getting to, is the point.
Right.
That's the point. So anyway, so moving on from that. Like you said, let's talk about the good stuff.
Yeah.
I want to bring up a current one, recent example. Did you, that was not in the book. This just happens to be, since we listened to this book. Did you see Beyonce recently?
The country thing? Like that whole...
So if I told you 4 years ago, let's say March of 2020, that's a wild time. Let's say March of 2021.
Yeah.
That Beyonce Knowles would be riding a horse in a cowboy hat with an American flag. Like, you would have been like, bullshit. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Right.
Like, to me, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Beyonce is by any means like a conservative or right wing or anything, but like, just to have something like that with an American flag, like that is a good thing. Which if she was doing that in 2021, it would be like pandemonium.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's just a recent example. I think the tides of turning. I think the best. Do you want to give any other examples before we go back to Salem?
No, I think
okay.
Yeah.
The one other I'll say, and then we'll get back to Salem. So like the Whitney Museum which this did happen a while ago, as in like 2017. There was a crazy, and it was a Emmett Till painting, but it was a white woman who did it. It was protested, and I think at the time, the issue, I think especially in the time of 2017, the issue there that this is being protested, and that's bad. I don't think you should really because it wasn't being protested for any of the right reasons. It was totally identity based. She and I think unfortunately the artist, and their last name was Schultz, she defends it by saying, well, Emmett Till's mother was also a mother, right? Like, and I'm a mother. I know I'm not black, but and then of course the argument was he'll never. And she uses the language, right? The language that you're quote unquote supposed to use. I'll never understand the black experience, especially for a black mother, yada yada yada. And I don't think she should have kowtowed to that, but she did defend her work. And the Whitney Museum, of which I was a member of, no big deal, 2022, 2023. I think that they kept it up. And I think that right there is what I always say, like these administrations, these CEOs, the school presidents, the executive directors, whatever it is, just stick up for your values.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do is just say, no, we're not taking down the statue of Abraham Lincoln. Yeah. We're not renaming this school. We're not kicking out this student. Like, we're not doing these things. If it's serious enough, we do our own investigation, whatever, like we have our process, but we're not doing it just because you said so. Right. You, whatever amorphous blob that is, crit blob that is. And I think Tarantino does a good job. I do know here about Tarantino.
Trader Joe's.
Trader Jose's. Yeah, Trader Joe's. And he, they said, right, they didn't give in. They kept. No. Yeah, I drink.
They even released a statement saying we don't think it's offensive, so no.
Yeah, I drink Trader Jose's beer. It's cheap and it's good. It tastes like Corona and it's super cheap. And Tarantino will just be like, I reject your premise, like whatever it is. I'm not going down that path, like that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And he wraps it up with a great part of Salem, which no one ever talks about. Is that hold on, so my note here. So one, you have to fight back, and I love, like, and legally you have to fight back, of course, unless you're in physical danger, fight back physically, but fight back legally. And there was some, back then, like, kind of guys did everything, and I say guys because they were allowed to. There was some guy, some lawyer, preacher, whatever, and these girls start doing this bullshit to him, right, accusing him, and he said, I'll file a defamation lawsuit against you. Like, you have no evidence of that. And you know what they did? They stopped.
Good.
They stopped. Okay. Yeah. And they turned their attention to, just like the crits do, like we were talking about, they're turning attention to weaker targets.
Yep.
Targets that didn't maybe have the money or the know-how, or the wherewithal to file a lawsuit. But it's like, so fight back. That's part of this. And another one was, they were traveling maybe to Boston or to another town. They started the convulsions and they cast an aspersion and said some woman just there on the street was a witch. And everyone just kind of looked at them like this wasn't Salem, it was outside of Salem, and just carried on their day and just ignored them. And they stopped.
Yeah. And
no one paid any attention to them, and there should be more of that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of how the crits used to be treated. It was, all right, you can do whatever you want in college. Don't disrupt people. Like, I noticed this being an issue when I was in law school. I was very progressive, but I was seeing like demonstrations like in like the Dartmouth library, and it was like, they're just studying.
Yeah.
Like, why are you bothering your fellow students who are just studying for exams or whatever?
Yeah.
And you like that to me, like, no, you're not like protesting in the public forum anymore. Like, you're disrupting other people.
Yep. Yeah, that was kind of a similar thing for me too. Like when I was working in Silicon Valley, and I did not like Ben Shapiro. So this is probably like 2016. And
Yeah.
so the reason I didn't like Ben Shapiro was, and now I he's all right. I'm just a modest fan of him. I don't follow him that closely or anything. But the only reason I didn't like him was just I read other articles smearing him.
Mhm.
But it was when he gave that talk at UC Berkeley, and it led to, I think, like $900,000 in damages, almost $1 million, and or it required almost $1 million in security because I was like, okay, come on. And then I listened to the talk, and I'm like, yeah, it was pretty anodyne. Like some of his stuff I agreed with, some of it I didn't. But I was like, yeah, he's not inciting violence. He's just there talking politics. Why did you need this much fucking security and police officers? And nearly $1 million. And so that was like a big turning point for me. It was like, he's not that bad. Come on. Like,
well, people love an enemy. It gives them a telos.
Yeah.
Right there. Telos. I have it tattooed on my arm. It gives them, purpose to, like again, because these are oftentimes upper middle class privileged people, whether they're white or not, but like they need to feel like they're doing good, and that's fighting Ben Shapiro. So just ignoring the crit, like an example, I don't know if there's a petition or whatever to get a professor fired or to get something torn down. You can hear him out. You can say, all right, we listen to you. These are our values. This is how this works. No. If they get violent, then they get fucking expelled. Like, I don't know. Like, they get rid of that shit because it's usually minority views. And it goes against what you believe. And I also love in here, I won't go into it, talked about before, but how one of the best trollings in our political history was under the Trump administration, when Princeton said, New Jersey's crown jewel, said, well, we are, systematically racist university, and the DOE did a investigation on them and made them comply with it. And like, wait, you can't do that. You accepted like $78 million in federal money. People forget that, like, just because they're private schools, they get federal money. Like, you have to still comply with things like the Civil Rights Act and equal protection of the 14th Amendment. And they did an investigation. That's the kind of shit I love. Like, fine, you're gonna virtue signal like that. We will investigate, because that's illegal. You cannot do that. You cannot be a systematically racist university and accept federal money. So that's part of the fighting back though thing. So, like, not caving. Remember that numbers are actually on your side. Like, people like, and he says this at the beginning of the book, that actually Gen Z is pushing back a lot more than they're given credit for. I think majority is like, even though all the gender stuff is up, like more identifying as on the LGBTQ spectrum, a lot of that fades away, and it's just fads, and it's, again, people like feeling a part of a group and feeling special. But a lot of the, like, Gen Z doesn't have a tolerance for this as much as people think. It's loud minority voices. Minority is in numbers. I don't mean racial minority there. But one of the things I'm seeing more on Twitter, which I really love, that I use myself, would be like when some crit publication tweets something, or some crit persona tweets something, people just go like, respond like, that doesn't work anymore. Like, that's the kind of shit I love. Because where that used to get attention, it's like, no, that, like, we don't believe in that anymore. Like, that we don't trust that anymore. So on that note, anything else you want to add about this book?
No, read it, listen to it.
I loved it. As much, even I loved it. I got angry sometimes about it. But that's just because it was making me relive and rethink things that I really despise. I think it was a crazy time. And I do think we're heading in the right direction. I think it'll always be a battle, but I think we're heading in the right direction.
One other thing too is that I also thought he was very fair, and even though he spends most of the book, criticizing this intersectional critical theory crap, he does, call out the right when they start engaging in similar tactics. He does, like, point out the dangers of the right overreacting or overcorrecting. So I thought that was cool of him to be like, to take a measured approach to this, where it's not just like,
well, yeah. So I do. I don't know. I'm torn. Part
Mm.
of me wants to be like Andrew Doyle, like Yasha Monk, Lukianov. Like
Yeah.
again, I love Fire, where it's like, no, we have to stick to our values. We have to, but and I do. That's where I want to be.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think it's so one-sided still
Yeah.
that I appreciate the Chris Rufo approach, where it's like, no, you have to fight fire with fire. Like
Yeah.
you have to take over school boards. You have to take over. Like you have to. Like it's so embedded because this isn't just like a Ivy League thing. Like this is at every institution.
Right.
This is in the government. This is in Fortune 500. This
Yeah.
is in like everything. Like literally everything that no, you have to fight. Like you have to fight back. And I appreciate that side too. So that's like where I'm personally torn.
Yeah.
I do think people like James Lindsay have kind of lost, what's the term? Like lost the plot.
Yeah.
I do see how you can get. I think Jordan Peterson, unfortunately, has kind of lost the plot in a way. I know you're a big fan of him. I like him a lot too. And on some things, I'm not a regular listener or reader of him,
Yeah.
but I think sometimes you become so ingrained, and obviously he has a more personal stake in it.
Yeah.
But I basically that's where I am. I'm like, there's the value based Lukianov, classical liberal side,
Mhm.
which a lot of Democrats and Republicans and independents want to strive for,
Yeah.
which is probably a noble goal.
Yep.
But I don't know if that's possible. That's
Right.
my problem. And there has to be a balancing act, which can only be done with like a right wing fight back to even get to a center.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. You could disagree with that, but like, I think Chris Rufo has like, I don't always agree with the tactics, or I don't know if I shouldn't say that. I think I am agreeing with the tactics. I don't know if I agree with the ends, right? About where but like, it's so one-sided and it's so damaging and I hate it so much. It's like, I appreciate that.
Right.
You have to get into the political system. We have to get into school boards until it's more balanced. And then
Right.
maybe we're saying the thing, then the right has gone too far. And then we do the same thing. But like,
Yeah.
it's, I don't know. I've been very kind of not convinced, but persuaded by that thinking where I wasn't so much even as of like last year.
Right. Yeah, no, I hear you. I've listened to Chris Rufo, and I'm torn on him because I think so much of what he's doing is great, and I think he's also done a great job of ringing the alarm bell about what's going on. But I did look at the curriculums for because like wasn't like co-founding a school or something.
They basically took over a very small liberal arts school in Florida. That was like a very progressive school.
Yeah, and I was looking at the curriculum, and I don't remember it off the top of my head. And I remember being kind of like, yeah, like a good chunk of this stuff I agree with, like a sort of a classical liberal arts approach. But there was also some stuff where it was also kind of like it seemed to be going a little overboard with the American exceptionalism.
Yeah, I don't love
so
that
like,
either. That becomes stale, and so again, I think that's exactly my point. Is that like that's the ends where I don't really love that.
Yeah,
but the means of like, no, this was even though it's a tiny school, I think even smaller, like half the size of my college, which was tiny. It's like, no, you gotta take over the shit. You gotta weed the shit. Like I heard some bad shit with that school, like how they just kind of had all these baseball players come in who couldn't even play, and they're just get like, I don't know, like that aside, I don't like that shit. And they're giving the president like a $200,000 raise, like that shit. I can't stand that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that.
Right.
I'm talking more like you can't just be like, okay, everyone, let's like have a substantive heated debate and the marketplace of ideas. And that was like, no. That's not how they fight. Like that's not how the crits fight. Right. They fight with shaming you and with with intimidation. And they can do that because they push, the right wing out, they push the center right out. They push the centrist out. They're going for the liberal. Like, you have to fight back. Like, you got to do something. I don't know if I sound extreme here. I think Chris Rufo has been painted. Like, I've heard a lot about him, and then I've listened to him talk, and he doesn't sound nearly as bad.
No.
Maybe I could, and you could show me some things where I'm like, oh, that's fucked up. Like, I don't agree with that. But I appreciate no, this is in all the schools. This is in all this, and I think, and for so long, the right was fine with low taxes,
Yep.
free trade. They'll get it out of their system. Look what happened to the children of the 60s. They became the adults of the 80s and the
Yeah.
Reagan Revolution. Like, no, I don't think that's the case
Right.
at all. And they ceded the culture, except for like abortion. They ceded most culture war stuff to
Yeah.
the left, thinking that'll fizzle out, and with age, everything will change. They were foolish. I think it was a very foolish thing to do. And I'm no like right-wing pugilist, but if things like these sorts of things have been now coded right-wing,
Yeah.
so I have no choice. Like
Right.
I'm at a very much a like what's the term I'm looking for? Identity crisis. Like I think, and we'll stop soon.
Yeah.
I've become very disillusioned with a lot of the left-wing people. I really loved Jacobin, Brianna Joy Gray, Chapo Trap House. Like I loved these kind of alt left wing,
Yeah.
even socialist platforms and speakers and stuff. I really enjoyed them. And the Israel war, not that I'm, an Israel supporter necessarily at all. It's sick.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's become really disturbing to me. And there's so very little on the left anymore I appreciate that I feel like what I like about the left now has just been kind of like a lot of it's just shifting to the populist right.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm like very much at an identity crisis.
Yeah.
Because like I used to always think like, oh, there's still left-wing stuff I like. And I'm just like not seeing it anymore. It's become really gross.
Yeah. When you see the left becoming, pro-war and anti-free speech and anti-working class, all the things that they were like up until like, I don't know, 15 years ago, they were always very pro, like, or at least they had opposite positions on. So
it's like apologists, not apologizing for, like apologists for like terrorism and violent crime, which overwhelmingly affects poor people,
right?
Like and terrible immigration laws, and really things that I'm like, wait a minute, like what the fuck happened to this left wing? And like and even recently, like I had to unfollow Jacobin, and I was like, I love Jacobin. Like I didn't always agree with them, but I thought they had really good pieces. They were very anti-identity politics. They were about inclusion in terms of like fighting power, like capitalist power, not like the identity bullshit. They laughed at people like Robin DiAngelo and Kennedy and all that shit, and a lot of that feels like it's gone. I don't know. I'm very upset about it because there's like so, and then on the right wing's a lot of nut shit too. So it's very I don't like it.
Yeah,
I'm not happy about it. I'll flesh it out more and have a more substantive discussion. But
well, we're independents, and that's good.
Yeah, and I have been for a very long time. But I saw my first Kennedy bumper sticker on the Garden State Parkway. Kennedy 2024, baby.
Nice.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Oh, nice.
He's my boy.
I might actually vote.
Yes, dude, fucking vote. It's important to vote. Good, you better vote. I'm voting RFK.
Yeah, I think I'll vote for him too. I like him.
Yes, man.
Yeah, he seems like a good guy, and he's married to that chick from Curb Your Enthusiasm. So that's cool.
Cheryl Hines.
Yep.
All
right. Read this book. Listen to it. Follow Andrew Doyle. We love him, and fight the crits.
Yep.
Bye, everybody.